Welcome back. Today we're mixing things up a bit with this mascarpone pumpkin pie. Now you could make this pie filling with just about any type of crust, but today I'm making an all butter crust, and this recipe is courtesy of Erin Jean McDowell and her new book, The Book on Pie. So I'm whisking together 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour with a pinch of salt, and then I'm adding in a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter that's been cut into 1/2 inch cubes. I'm going to just toss the butter cubes that are cold around in the flour to coat them, and then I'm going to start actually pinching the butter with my pointer finger and my thumb. The goal here is to flatten out the bits of butter until they're the size of about 1/2 walnut, and by flattening and creating these thin layers of butter, once our pie dough bakes up and is rolled out, it's going to puff up and create a really delicious and flaky pie crust. So it's important that you make sure that you get every little bit of butter, but that there are still some large chunks of butter like this. At this point in time, I like to make a well in the center of my dry ingredients and add 1/4 cup of ice cold water. The ice cold water just helps keep that butter cold, and it really does help, especially if you have warm hands. So I kind of toss the flour into the water and then slowly start to knead it to help the dough come together. It's going to be a little bit dry, and you're going to need to add a little bit more water as you're doing this. I like to add about 1 tablespoon at a time and add just enough for the dough to come together. So it shouldn't be sticky, it should really just barely be holding on, and you should still be able to see large chunks of butter, just like this. At this stage, you want to wrap your dough in a piece of plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least 30 minutes to allow the gluten strands to relax. I let my dough chill for about an hour, and then I lightly dusted my counter with a little bit of flour. I rolled out my dough kind of starting from the center, and I made sure to lift it up and move it as I was rolling it to make sure that none of the dough is sticking to the counter. You can also add more flour if needed, but if your dough is properly hydrated, it shouldn't be too sticky. You want to roll your dough out to be about 1 inch larger than your pie pan, and today I'm using a 9-inch pie pan. I trimmed away any excess dough with a pair of clean scissors, and then I began to crimp the edges just by using my knuckle and my fingers. I also tucked the dough before I started crimping any little bit of overhang underneath to help make my crust a little bit more substantial. Once I was done crimping, I also docked the dough with a fork, and you want to make sure that you're poking holes in the bottom and the sides of your pie crust. Next, we're going to add a large piece of parchment paper over our pie crust and fill our pan fully with some either dry beans or pie weights. While our crust par bakes at 425 degrees, we're going to work on our mascarpone pumpkin pie filling. I'm adding 3 large eggs, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract into a large bowl. Once those have been whisked together and combined, it's time to add in 2 cups of our unsweetened pumpkin puree, and then we're going to add all of our warm spices and our salt. So this is 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Then it's time for our final ingredient, 1 cup of room temperature mascarpone cheese. Once that is stirred in and the batter is nice and smooth, we're going to pour it into our cooled and par-baked pie crust. This is going to bake in a preheated 375-degree oven for 35 to 40 minutes, and then it's going to cool fully and chill in the fridge for 2 hours. Once it is fully cooled, we're going to add on a French meringue topping, and to really jazz this pie up, I decided to toast it using a kitchen torch. This pie seriously is so delicious, and it is such a fun spin on a classic pumpkin pie. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and that I'll see you guys again soon.